everyone, I'm Renee Tucci, and today we're going to play with a little sand and flowers. Okay, so you can see that I've started preparing my cube vases with a layer of just traditional play sand that you would find at any big box home store. You do want to make sure, if you're looking for sand for this kind of application, that you're getting the play sand that has been washed and cleaned and is more refined than sand that you might get for a construction project. Then I headed to a craft store, a big box craft store, and I got some colored sand to add just a little bit of pop. So I'm going to bring out my inner kindergartner and add some layers of color to each of my vases here. You should, I encourage you to have a lot of fun with this. Don't be afraid to maybe tip a vessel on its side and maybe create, cascading layers down below. For today, I'm gonna go a little boring and just do sort of horizontal layers through my sand, because I like a really clean, distinct design look for myself. But again, I encourage you to be creative and bring out your inner kindergarten sand art friend. Okay, now I've got my trio of cubes filled with the sand that I want to use. They're not all exactly the same, they're not perfect. I'm okay with that. In this type of design, I just want to have fun with flowers and sand. So you can see I've added my 3 layers. I did a more shallow layer of the white, and I've actually conserved some so that I can add a little bit to the top of each one when I'm finished adding the flowers, just to clean up the surface of the sand a bit. Now I'm going to add my flowers, but of course, first I have to wet the sand. So I have a little pail here filled with water, and what I want to do is just add the water slowly and carefully, because it will disturb the sand. As you can probably see, some of the color from the second layer is coming up into the top layer, but that's okay, because like I said, at the end we'll go back and we'll just add a little bit of the white to clean up the top, and you'll never see it. And what you want is for the water to, you want to do it slowly, and you want to get the sand just wet. You don't want it to be soupy. If it starts to get soupy, you can just add more sand. But go slowly, and you'll see that the color of the sand starts to change, and that will be your indicator that everything is getting wet. Adding my flowers, I wanted to share what flowers I'll be using. So my number 1 favorite flower, we've got some Craspedia here. This is actually dried, but the great thing about Craspedia is it looks exactly the same dried as it does fresh, and I love mixing drieds with fresh. We also have some green trick Dianthus, which is in the carnation family. You can see it's got those telltale knuckles as it comes down the stem. I've got, gosh, I wish you guys had scratch and sniff. This dill, I have a little bit of dill here to bring in some fragrance, and just because I love the little wispy touch that it's going to add. I have some yarrow, some yellow yarrow, some Rudbekia or black-eyed Susan from my garden. Also from my garden, blue hydrangea to bring out the blue of the sand, and also from my garden, some Baptisia foliage. So those are the flowers and greens I'm going to be using for this. And I'm just going to start to add a little bit of everything in all of the vases. I want them all to play together and play nicely. So you can see that when I added that Baptisia into the sand, it's giving me a bit of resistance, which is good. It makes me feel like the stems that I'm placing into the sand are secure. And sand is an excellent mechanic, especially in the summer when we can play to the summertime vibes. And it really holds the stems exactly where we want them. And it provides a sustainable mechanic for us to use. It holds water really well. You just have to make sure that you continue to add water daily to keep that sand wet. But again, it's a really fun accent and sustainable. When you're finished with the flowers, to get rid of or dispose of the sand, you would never want to dump it down your drain, obviously. You can actually just go outside to your yard or your garden and add it into the ground, and pretty quickly it will work its way into the soil and the sand will disappear. Adding the Craspedia into my design here. A few things I wanted to point out. First of all, I went through and I have these two, you might not be able to see them too easily, but I have two big seashells that were from my personal collection. They have a date written on the inside of them, so I must have collected them on some vacation somewhere. And I slipped those in there to give a little bit of a nod to the seashore even more. And the other thing I wanted to point out was that the dill that I was putting in had very thick, here we go, really thick, soft stems. So before I added it into the sand, I used a skewer or hyacinth stick, whatever you had, and I actually used it to pilot a hole. So I just poked the stick into the sand and sort of opened up the hole, and then I put the dill in, and that worked like a charm. So the last two things I'll want to do to this is I actually have here, just out of camera, I have two little glittery orange butterflies, which aside from the butterflies, we have a really beautiful analogous color harmony here, which I love for the summer. The butterflies give a little bit of a nod to the monarchs and sort of extend our color harmony to extended analogous. And then lastly, as I mentioned, I'll go back through and just add a little dusting of the white sand on the very top just to finish it off and clean it up. I hope that you've been inspired by this video, that you get some time in the sand with or without flowers, that you've learned a tip or technique, and that you go out and create.